Hey, everybody, it's Bob Phibbs, the Retail Doc. Thanks for joining me today on Friday, November 19th. It is noon o'clock on the East Coast, and you are here with the Retail Doc. So do me a favor while you are putting your coffee where it won't spill and you're putting the dog out or you're getting into your office. Type in and let me know where you're joining me from because that's always interesting. We have people around the world who join me. And today I'm really excited because I'm going to be talking about something which everyone seems to be talking about, but there's not an awful lot of clarity. So if you are looking for what's going on in cutting edge retail and certainly in climate change and looking at sustainability, well, this is going to be a little discussion. I actually have a guest with me today. I'm going to actually call him into here with me. There he is. Kris Barton. He's Director of Market Development at Avery Dennison Smartrac to help unpack this whole idea of sustainability. Kris, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, so I've been with Avery Dennison for about 11 years almost. Been in the retail space with sensors and RFID technology for close to 20 now. So it's been an interesting journey. So I'm really excited to talk about sustainability and the regenerative economy. It's near and dear to my heart.
Excellent. I love that. Well, we've all seen those bins for years encouraging us to separate waste and recycle, but do we really trust what's being done with those once they leave our site? And what's meant by sustainability? I start off by just looking that up. It helps to avoid the depletion of natural resources in order to maintain our ecology. And oftentimes we hear about it in retail when it comes to apparel, waste, and landfills of disposable fashion. And I was reading a research paper based in the UK, and it revealed the impacts from the fashion industry include over 92 million tons of waste produced per year and 1.5 trillion liters of water consumed alongside chemical pollution and high levels of CO2 emissions. So I'm talking with Avery Dennison today because they have a special report out on regenerative retail, and I'll put that link in it in the comments here. You'll be able to click and go to the blog where I talk about it. You'll be able to read it and learn some more about it. But part of what we talk about is not just sustainability and recycling. It's actually about RFID. So I know, Kris, you've been in that for over 10 years. And how has it changed and evolved in the retail sector? And before I forget, you probably have to define what actually is RFID for our audience.
Sure. So RFID, or radio frequency identification, which RFID is short for, is a sensor material. So we basically embed sensors into garments, hang tickets. It basically takes RF energy from what's termed a reader, and then it basically wakes up the tag. It's a passive, non-battery version that we primarily work with UHF RFID, and then basically transmits back the digital identity of that garment. So in most cases, retailers are using what's called an EPC, or electronic product code, similar to a UPC. And that is primarily made up of basically the UPC plus a SKU, or plus a serial number at that point. So just a unique identification so that you can want that merchandise quickly, easily, either with a handheld device or through a portal, things like that, to collect what you have in the store.
So 10 years ago, how did that work compared
Yeah,
to how it is now?
so it's been an interesting journey. RFID's been around for a long time, but it really grabbed hold in the retail sector in the early 2000s and or late 2000s, early 2010s, I would say, as some retailers started to look at adopting RFID at the item level. So wanting to see what's in their store, front of house, back of house. And the first wave was really about, what do I have in the back that I don't have out on the sales floor? And a good example of that was the denim wall. The manager would walk by and say, denim wall is full, looks good. That evolved into, do I have the right assortment? So do I have sizes that are not on the floor that are in the back of house? So that's where it all kind of started, making a better experience for the consumer, allowing them to find what they were looking for quicker, easier, ultimately resulting in improved sales. As things evolved and omni-channel started to grab hold of the retail industry, and it's kind of interesting because people call it omni-channel, but I just think of it really as retail in general these
Exactly.
days. Retailers wanted to say, well, I've got this item in a store that's across the town from Bob. Why do I want to ship it from a DC that's 2 to 3 states over? If I can leverage that merchandise that's already there, I can do that quickly and easily and get it there at a lower cost, get it there faster. The problem is that without having good systems in place, typically store merchandise inventory accuracy is very poor. So you look at a SKU level, typically you're seeing something in the neighborhood of 60, 70% inventory accuracy at the SKU level. It doesn't mean you're missing 30% of your product, just means you think you have four mediums and four larges, and you might have five of one and three of the other. So those kind of distortions happen. So RFID came about as a way of saying I can quickly measure this inventory on a daily or weekly basis to remove a lot of that distortion and start to leverage those stores as mini DCs, or as I term it, forward deployed inventory. Now when you go online to look at it, they know, hey, I'm right across town from where this consumer is at. Can I ship it from that store? I have high confidence level that it's there, so that I can just ship it over across town. That has a lot of impacts in terms of speed, cost, and obviously what we're going to get into today, which is sustainability and the carbon footprint impact.
Well, the
So,
other thing I was
yeah,
gonna say, the other thing that's cool about that is that with those tags, you can actually put it on your website. We have 843 of these, or we have 3, which I think cutting edge retailers are starting to realize, that's a game changer because we've all had that experience, right? We go to order something, oh, click, buy, oh, we're out. You'll have to wait 2 or 3 weeks. Oops. And if you can get rid of that, then you become a retailer of choice too. So I didn't mean to interrupt your
no,
train
that's
of thought
okay.
there.
No, you're exactly right, Bob. So as these consumers get more educated, they expect the transparency to know what's in your store. The majority of people are shopping online, even just to get an idea of what the assortment looks like before they go to the store. So RFID allows them as a retailer to look on a daily, weekly basis, true up their inventory, expose those items on the web instead of relying on things like safety stock or some algorithm that may or may not be accurate. And what I always like to say is this gives them the certainty to be able to guarantee to promise to the consumer. And one of the biggest things I've seen, in my 20 years of retail work is that retailers are trying to look at all these different problems through the years, and they're trying to figure out what tools can I put in my belt to help solve those problems. To me, RFID provides certainty. And honestly, I can't think of a better arsenal to have in your toolkit than certainty, because if you know for sure you have something, then you can do a better job of operating. You can improve your operation costs. You can lower your cost to serve. Hopefully, you can do things that we're going to talk about today, which is minimize your carbon footprint by operating less merchandise through your supply chain and traveling in the right methods with the right packaging. All those things come together.
Well, and I like that whole idea that, let's face it, shipping box comes in. Oh, we got 36 of this. There was a time people would make sure that they matched up every invoice to everything that's in there. And let's face it, things go awry or five-finger discounts. There's a lot of reasons why. Well, it says the computer says we have 10 of these and we don't have any. Oh, those stupid computers, we can't trust them.
Yep.
And if that's what your crew is saying, imagine what your DC is saying. How the hell is that possible? Because we know what we're putting out there, what's going on. And one of the things that I really liked about your report was the idea that where it makes sense is at the manufacturer level, right? RFID now, it's not something that happens at the store level, and that's a game changer, right? So, what is that regenerative advantage of RFID tagging, and what are some case studies you might have had?
Yeah, so attaching the RFID to the garment or item for sale back all the way at the source is key. So a lot of times you're already attaching some sort of a tag or label to the item or to the packaging. So a lot of times it's not an extra step. There are some cases in which packaging will require an additional label for this, and we're looking at ways of integrating the RFID into that packaging. So that is done as well. So with us, that allows you to take advantage of the inventory accuracy or visibility through the pipeline from the very beginning. So if you think about the current environment that we're in with all the container ships sitting off of Long Beach and all the frustration that people have with getting things, you can now start to adjust your supply chain and say, hey, I know I've got this one in the pipe. If this consumer is not looking for it immediately, I may be able to guarantee them one that I already know is out here, but I have the level of certainty that I didn't have before. So I can basically still make the one I have available for sale because the other consumer is willing to wait for a little bit to get the other item. So we're seeing a lot of that. Now, with us, with the regenerative retail economy, what we're seeing is, a lot of people use the term sustainability, and that's a great term, but when we look at the regenerative, it's a little bit different. So in my mind, sustainability often is about how do we do less bad, right? So how do I do less of this, right? That's creating a problem. How do I, how do I put less plastic in the ocean? How do I do less carbon emissions? Things like that. When we think about the regenerative retail model, we think more about how do we do more good. So switching the steps a little bit about, how do we take more plastic out of the ocean than we're putting in it? So being more proactive in that light is a big thing for us.
I like that. A lot of the packaging that's in the report, I think it was talking about like wine bottles and some different things. How much different we can really solve an awful lot of things, and packaging is rarely something that I hear about. But let's be honest, if something didn't have a PR aspect to it, we hear it was sustainable. I mean, so many people are using these buzzwords now, and um, I think it's interesting. We hear that Gen Z is all environmentally conscious, right? It's all about going through and being more conscious. And yet, that's the generation that most is likely to order things. And the whole rent, there's several of them out there now where we're renting clothes. And you
Yep.
think about all these cardboard boxes going back and forth. I think we have a cardboard shortage. Somebody was talking about how I guess Amazon's been hoarding cardboard since last January or February, getting ready for the holidays. But does online shopping have a cardboard problem?
So I think online has a lot of problems, and cardboard is one of them. So consumers probably really, even though there is the sense that consumers are saying they're aware, they probably really don't, as a whole, understand the impacts that they have when they make their shopping decisions. So things like convenience versus sustainability. A lot of these items are being ordered as individual items, so they're being packaged as individual shipping. Many consumers are ordering multiple sizes of an item, try them on, then ship the ones that they don't want back. So you're creating not just the footprint coming to the consumer, but also the return. So there's a large impact that the returns goods have. Um, Obviously, the retailers are feeling that in the form of limited capacity with the carriers as well. That's obviously laws of supply and demand, and you're seeing those costs go up. So especially over the holiday season, you're seeing those costs go up, and you're seeing retailers having to pull in um, their limits in terms of when they can meet the guaranteed promise for Christmas, right? So typically you want to have the shortest time between you when you stop taking orders for those Christmas things. But we're hearing, some retailers are looking at, dates, around early to mid-December that they're going to say we're only going to commit it. Like if you have RFID in your stores, then you can give certainty that you're going to have that product and give visibility to that consumer down to literally the day before Christmas for things like buy online, pick up in store, or curbside pickup, things like that. But overall, I would agree to your point that all of these things have just created a massive shipping problem for the carriers, and a lot of that is cardboard. And a lot of it's not necessarily cardboard, and it's things like plastic and bubble wrap that don't go through the traditional recycling streams. So it can be challenging. It doesn't go through the bin that you have out on your driveway that the regular carrier picks up. The bigger problem there is everybody thinks it's plastic, it goes in the bin. Not all plastics are the same. So bioplastics, for example, have an entirely different recycling stream. And when you start to mix these streams, it actually does more harm than it does good, because then those recycling processes get gummed up and large batches of material get scrapped and thrown away because they don't have a way of processing them anymore.
Have you been looking in my recycle bin?
I have.
I I always I always wonder. It's like, it'll say on the outside certain types of plastic don't go in here, but then you're like, is this the kind of plastic that does and doesn't? And I think we have a long way of educating the consumer about that. But I was surprised. I got a pair of shoes from Nordstrom the other day, and for the first time, they actually shipped it in its regular shoe box with just a little plastic bag around it. And it reminded me, probably back when you started 20, 30 years ago, maybe, when grocery was the battleground, and deodorants and things that could fit on a shelf no longer had a little box around them because they were told, oh, they've got to have that little box to protect it in shipping. And now it's common. We just see the product out on the shelf. Are there other opportunities like that where where are we going with all of this, do you think, Kris?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think some retailers have done a better job than others, but we all have stories of getting an online order that ships to your house, and it's a small item or two, and the box is massive, right? It just so happens maybe that's what the box availability was for that packer right at that particular moment. But we're seeing some trends in that space. People trying to look to remove packaging as much as possible. We're seeing things like SIOC or ship in its own container. So in like some cases, like you're talking about your shoes from Nordstrom, there's studies people are looking at. How do I maybe just ship it in that shoebox, right? Is there a way that that shoebox could be utilized as a shipping package instead of adding that additional material around the outside? I think it's a little bit off right now. Consumers are probably not aware of it. Some things like sneakerheads, they want the boxes to be perfect. So there's some customer limitations, some trade-offs that have to be made for some of these things. But overall, I would say the retailers are starting to make a move. The pandemic obviously threw fuel on the fire with all this online shipping and things like that. So it's taken a little bit of time to adjust, but I think we're seeing some adjustments happen. I would say the biggest problem right now overall is that the retailers have not done a good job of really understanding what the trade-offs are and educating the consumers. So they don't really have a way to quantify the impacts of their new retail model. As digital orders blew up, you heard retailers say, I really had to shift my model to be, all this digital online and shipping and things like that. Well, just because you have all this now doesn't mean you take your sustainability goals and throw them out the window, right? You got to take the moment and look at it and say, what are the impacts I'm having on the environment, and how do I make sure they're in line with my long-term goals?
I don't know. I think a lot of retailers took their training departments and threw them out the window when the pandemic hit, and we're still suffering the problems with that.
Yeah.
And the regenerative retail report that we're talking about today, which again I put it in the comments here, you could see it, and afterwards I'll share the link again. But it's a different mindset. I think it's kind of a what steps could people start with, and I know you have that towards the end if you have any of those in mind, because at the end of the day, yes, the big Walmarts, Amazons, Costco's, they've all got dedicated departments deep into this, looking at it, because it is going to come down to dollars and cents, along with sustainability and making those smart choices where things can be reused and never get into the system is better than thinking about, oh, how do we just limit it? And so any takeaways that you could share with us towards the end of our time here today, Kris?
Yeah, so the report does a good job of laying out some of the key drivers, things like stakeholder capitalism, where retailers and companies in general need to prioritize, what they're doing and why they're doing it the way they're doing it, to be better for the economy, the regenerative economy. Sorry. Also, the big piece we mentioned earlier is kind of the convenience conundrum. So, how do you face the trade-offs between that instant gratification and understanding what that means in terms of you as a consumer, and the impacts that that has? Omni-channel is a big piece of the puzzle. As I mentioned, RFID, my bread and butter area, is basically helping people to minimize the amount of inventory they have to carry, identifying it at the best location to get a consumer at the lowest sustainability impact. Eco-educators, retailers offering education for consumers to understand, hey, here's the trade-offs you're making. So as you're going through making your purchase, retailers could do things to say, hey, if you can do this, these are the impacts that you could seriously have on our sustainability efforts. Packaging, we talked about making more pro-planet packaging, understanding what the different innovations are. Sometimes paper is not better than plastic for different things, and there's reasons for that. It depends on what it is. And then also, retailers need to be held accountable and say, hey, I have a way of providing you proof in the long run of what I've done and what my impacts are, how I'm doing more good instead of doing less bad.
Well, being able to crow about it, exactly, which probably brings us back to sustainability and press releases. But I
Exactly.
appreciate your time today, Kris, going through and helping us kind of understand that it is a bigger picture than just to say a buzzword and what those actions take. And again, I don't think most people would think of RFID as part of sustainability or of anything other than, oh, yeah, that's nice for shoplifting, to be able to understand that maybe you could be bringing more merch that's in the back room because you have it, and not ending up doubling things and having to mark them down and all the back and forth as well. So it's an exciting world. I appreciate you joining us. Any final thoughts here today, my friend?
No, just to say that I guess the one thing is I'd reiterate the certainty piece, right? You just nailed it all on the head. If you know what you have, you can do a lot better things, right?
I like that. Great place for us to end. Thanks everybody for joining us today, and I'll look forward to having you joining me on another live. And thanks again, Kris. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.